Good morning. Today we look at 1 Kings 16 through 18. And 1 Kings 16 deals with a lot of bad kings, a lot of evil kings. At the end of chapter 15, we were introduced to Asa, who was king of Judah for many years. And so a lot of these kings now that we have of Israel will be related to the years of King Asa's reign that way. And so like in verse 33 of chapter 15, just as an introduction today, in the third year of King Asa of Judah, Baasha, son of Ahijah, began to reign, and he reigned for 24 years. And so this guy was a bad guy. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. And chapter 16 begins with, the word of the Lord came to Jehu, son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, therefore I will consume you and all of your house. But yet, even though he was evil and didn't follow the ways of the Lord, he ruled somehow for 24 years, it tells us in what we did here, what we read. And of course, we don't hear a lot. Verse 5 says, now the rest of the kings of King Baasha are recorded in, and his, he slept with his ancestors. I mean, nice way to say he died. It really is. He slept with his ancestors. And then his son succeeded him. And this was in the 26th year of King Asa that Elah, son of Baasha, began to serve. But he had a servant who plotted against him, Zimri. And, Elah was at this person's house, it says, drinking himself drunk. And that's something we don't read very often in the Bible, drinking himself drunk, or talk of anyone who was drunk. I mean, this was, it just wasn't something they seemed to do. But anyway, while he was drinking himself drunk, this Zimri, the commander of the army, came and struck him down and killed him. And then this is in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah. And then he began to reign, and he then did what the prophet had said would happen to King Baasha's house. He destroyed, he wiped them all out. He killed them all that way, and then we're done with this King Zimri right away, because he died and everything. He was killed that way. And then, not Zimri, Elah. And then Zimri reigned for 7 years, and the troops camped, and then he's succeeded by Omri. There's a division after he dies, and there's two guys, and then this Omri, begins to reign. And verse 25, Omri did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did more evil than all who were before him. And then we hear that again in the 38th year of King Asa. Ahab, son of Omri, began to reign, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. So these Israelite kings were they were a terrible group of people, not doing what God would have them. And then, as Ahab is king, he's building altars to Baal and worshiping Baal. And verse 33 again, Ahab made a sacred pole and did more to provoke the anger of the Lord than all of the kings of Israel who were before him. So, it's a downward spiral with these kings. And so chapter 16 just deals with a whole slug of evil, bad ruling kings. Chapter 17, we are introduced to Elijah. And the story of Elijah and his successor, Elisha. Some will say Elisha. It doesn't matter to me how you say it, but I say Elijah and Elisha, even though it's hard to keep track. But so from here in chapter 17 of 1 Kings, we read of Elijah and Elisha through chapter 10 of 2 Kings. But Elisha, the Tishbite, says to Ahab, So here's the first words of the prophet. And he's not introduced as a prophet or anything. It's just Elisha the Tishbite says to Ahab, the king, as the Lord lives, there will not be dew or rain for 3 years except by my word. And then the word of the Lord came to Elijah to go and to hide yourself by the Wadi Cherith, and I will send crows with food for you in the morning and in the evening, and you will drink from the brook, and they did for a while, until the brook also dried up because of the drought that God had announced by Elijah's words. And then God says to Elijah, go and live with this widow in Zarephath. Is it? Yeah. And she goes and he finds this widow and she's got nothing. I mean, she's ready to fix their last loaf of bread from what wheat or what flour and oil she has. And then she and her son, she is, we're just going to die. We've got nothing left. But he asks for a cake of bread, a loaf of bread. And then he says to her, the word of the Lord, will come, and the bread and the oil will not run out until the drought is broken. And he stays with her, and this was, so this is a continuing miracle of just like the manna in the wilderness, God providing. And she would use so much of the flour and so much of the oil, but there was always enough to provide food for each day. And then her son becomes sick, and basically, and he dies, and she is distraught. Well, why wouldn't she be? And she complains to Elijah about bringing this upon her house, and he takes this boy, doesn't say how old he is, but he takes his boy up to his room and he prays to God, and he asks God to give life back, and God responds and gives life back to this boy. And she understands and believes for certain that he is this prophet. And then chapter 18, again, the word of the Lord comes to Elijah, go to Ahab and tell him, that I will send rain to the earth. So Elijah went to find Ahab, but Ahab had been having search parties out for Elijah. Elijah was a wanted person. He was hiding out. And as Elijah comes to Obadiah, Obadiah recognizes him. And Elijah says, go and tell Ahab that I am coming to see him. And Obadiah says, there's been reports and stuff all the time of you're here, you're there, and we never find you. And if I go to Ahab and tell him you're coming and you don't, he's going to kill me. But Elijah is true to his word and comes to Ahab. And I just love Ahab's greeting to Elijah. Is it you troubler of Israel? I mean, how much had Elijah done at this time? I mean, he had spoken the word of the drought. That was, but so he was the troubler of Israel. It didn't occur to Ahab that maybe, his falling away from God, his making statues to this Baal, this false god, and his worshiping Baal, the false god, didn't occur to him at all that he may be the troubler of Israel. But he is upset with Elijah for being the troubler of Israel. And this is the rest of this chapter is a great story of Elijah saying to Ahab, well, you get all of Baal's prophets. There's 450 of them, 400 of them, depending. There's differences there. But you get all of those prophets of Baal, and I am the lone prophet of God. And you have your prophet bring two bulls and have them cut it up and build this altar and cry out and pray to Baal that Baal will come and burn up and consume this offering. And of course, it doesn't happen. And Elijah is there, cry a little bit louder, maybe he's sleeping, Elijah's just egging him on. It just kind of laugh a little bit at some of this, like at Verse 27, at noon Elijah mocked him. Cry louder, surely he's a god. Either he's meditating, or he has wandered away, or he's on a journey, or maybe he's asleep and needs to be awakened, and you can just hear Elijah, telling these prophets of Baal, where is your God? What's he doing? Is he not paying attention? And of course, nothing happens. And they cry aloud as their custom. They cut themselves with swords until blood, and they raved on and on and on, but there was no voice, no answer, no response. So Elijah builds an altar, digs this berm around it, slaughters the bull, puts it on there, and then he has it doused 3 times with water so that everything is sopping wet and the water is filled this trench around it. And then he cries out, he prays to God. And the fire from God comes, takes the bowl, the offering, the stones, evaporates all the water and everything, and proof, of the reality and the power of the God of Israel. And then all of the prophets, they kill all of the prophets of Baal. And Elijah worships God, and the rains come. The drought is broken. And so this is the beginning of the story of Elijah, the troubler of Israel. And I love that title for him. Not quite as much as I love Prophet of God, though.